Hi, this is Vicki with Crafting for Fun. Today I want to share with you how I made this cool card that has gold foiled detail. This card is unique in two ways. First of all, it features gold embossing and gold foil detail in the paper. And second of all, it's kind of a fun fold in that only the top flap of this card opens. So it's a little bit unique in that way. Gold foil papers and gold leaf are hugely popular right now, and so recently I purchased a paper stack at my local Joann's store, and it contains several papers that had foil leafing, and I just decided that I wanted to challenge myself to do something with those papers. This paper has a little bit of a Moroccan feel to me, so I dug around in my stamps and I found an old retired flower stamp that also kind of had a little Moroccan vibe to me, and I decided to pair the two to make this card. So let me get my things together and I'll show you how I made this card. To create today's project, you'll need the following items. You'll need a piece of vanilla colored cardstock that measures 5 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches. I laid the 6 1/4 inch side of my cardstock along the top edge of my scoring tool and scored at 2 inches. You'll also need a piece of Bermuda Bay cardstock, in this case, that measures 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So this is the size of a standard A2 card that's not folded. So 1/4 of a sheet of 8 1/2 by 11 paper. Again, that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. You'll need a piece of the same color cardstock, and this piece measures 5 inches by 1 1/2 inches, and then a piece of designer series paper that measures 1 1/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And this paper, this particular designer paper, is from a DCWV stack called Violet Leaf, and I purchased this at my local Joann's store for it was a $6 pad. It was one of their value pads, and I purchased it with a coupon, and I believe I got it for $3. It has a lot of gold leaf papers in it, and I decided that I just needed to try to work outside of the box and try to make something with one of those gold embossed papers. So in addition to the cardstock items, I'm using an old Stampin' Up! Stamp called the Triple Treat Flower stamp. It is a single stamp, and it had a coordinating punch called the Fancy Flower Punch, and I'm using that. I'm using some Bermuda Bay ink, which matches my cardstock, and some Versamark ink, which is a sticky ink that allows me to use embossing powder with it. So now I'm using some gold embossing powder. And I'll be using a heat tool, and in addition to that I have a thank you stamp that's just something from my stack. It's a very inexpensive stamp. So let me get set up and I'll show you how to make this card. I'm going to begin my project today by stamping first. First I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the vanilla piece, and then I'm going to stamp my embossed image and punch it out. And then I'll be ready to assemble my card. So this is my vanilla piece of cardstock, and my 2-inch score mark is here. So this portion here is the part that is below that 2-inch score mark. I'm going to lay it on my mat, and I'm going to use the grid lines here to help me line things up. I'm going to open up my Bermuda Bay ink, which again matches the color of cardstock that I've chosen. So if you have an ink that matches the cardstock that you're using on your project, it is a very nice touch. And then over towards the right hand side of the card and up approximately 1/2 inch from the bottom of the cardstock, I'm going to stamp the words thank you. And that's all I need my Bermuda Bay for, so I'm going to close that up and set my stamped image aside. Now I'm going to bring out my Versamark ink and my flower stamp. And I'm just using a scrap of vanilla cardstock that is exactly the same color as the vanilla cardstock that I'm using on my card. I'm going to ink up my Versamark stamp very well. Versamark is a clear, sticky ink that the embossing powder sticks well to and holds it in place until it can be heat set. It also creates a watermark. If you stamp on a colored cardstock with Versamark, you get a very nice watermark effect. So I'm going to grab my heat tool, and I'll show you how I'm going to finish this image. Okay, I have my heat tool ready. I'm going to take a regular scrap of cardstock here that I've just folded to catch my extra embossing powder. And I'm going to grab my gold embossing powder. Oops, that I sealed up very tightly. I'm going to sprinkle it generously over the stamped image. Turn it over, and then tap off the excess. And there we go. Have a really nice image there. And before I heat set that, I want to go ahead and put away all of the extra embossing powder. Save that for another project. So it's sealed well. Now, I'm going to start my heat gun, and I'm going to let it heat up for just a moment. While it's heating, I'm going to make sure I have my image ready. It does melt. The embossing powder is super fine, so it does melt very, very quickly. And as soon as you see it change colors and start to get shiny, you'll know that the image is completely ready to go. I don't know if you can see that, how quickly that's happening. But I'm completely done. So, now I'm ready to punch my images out. So I'm going to grab my fancy flower punch. And I'm going to begin by grabbing just a little scrap of Bermuda Bay cardstock, and I want to punch out one of these flowers just out of the plain Bermuda Bay cardstock. And then I want to take my stamped image, and I may need to cut off a little bit or tear off a little bit so it'll fit better in my stamp. And I'm going to stick that in my punch and take time to line that up so that I get a nice even cut all the way around. And there is my gold embossed image. So now I'm ready to go ahead and make my card. So I'm going to grab my vanilla cardstock. I'm going to fold it along the score line and score it, or burnish it very well. And my thank you sentiment is on my flap. I'm going to grab my backer piece, which is Bermuda Bay. Turn my vanilla card over, add adhesive around the edges, and then center that up. Center that vanilla up very well on that card. There we go. Now I'm going to grab those two pieces, those long skinny pieces, and I'm going to take the designer paper that has the gold foil detail on it. Put adhesive on the back, and I'm going to very carefully line that up in the center of this. And what I want is I want about the same amount of border all the way around this little piece of designer paper. There we go. Turn that over, apply adhesive along the back of that. And then when you apply it to the bottom of this card, you're going to want to make sure that there's about the same amount of vanilla showing on the left, the right, and along the bottom. So it is worth it to take a few extra minutes to position that carefully. Let's see how I can do this. There we go. Pretty good. That's what I have. And now I'm ready to layer my flower. So I'm going to grab my embossed flower. I'm going to put a foam dimensional on the back of that. I'm going to grab my punched Bermuda Bay flower, and I'm going to, instead of putting it directly on top, I'm going to turn it so that between the petals on my embossed flower I see the Bermuda Bay peeking through. Then I'm going to turn that over and up near one side. So I'm going to put two dimensionals, but they're going to be on the same side because I'm going to want to apply this to the top flap of my card, but I don't want it on the bottom so that my flap will still operate freely. I'm going to remove the liners from the back of that. Bring my card back, and approximately half of my card will, my flower will be on the flap and half will be overlapping. And there we go. I do have another sentiment that I can put on the inside, but I thought that I would leave this one plain. I think that this is a really unique card. I think it is beautiful, and I think it was easy to put together. So I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you have any questions, please email me at craftingforfun@gmail.com or check out my blog, craftingforfun.blogspot.com, for other craft ideas.